Welcome to Sakshi TV's special immigration show with attorney Chand Parvathaneni from Managing Attorney at law firm of Sim Parvathaneni and Brown. Please note that Sakshi TV has 3 immigration shows every week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. EST with attorney Sheila Murthy, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. EST with attorney Prashanthi Reddy in English, and on Friday at 6 p.m. EST with Banu Ilindra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you are an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call us at 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on this show is not a legal advice and for general information purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents will not be responsible for the use of information. If you need specific legal advice, please contact the attorney directly. Mr. Chan needs no introduction, but if you need consultation, please log on to spblawfirm.com. And if you connect them, don't forget to mention Sakshi TV with them. From the beginning, spblawfirm.com has put a wealth of free information and online tools in the hands of immigrant community and for the benefit of US employers. The www.spblawfirm.com site provides you with latest and cutting-edge information on the US immigration law and policies explained in terms you don't have to be a lawyer to understand. Today's topic is H1B EAD and Green Card recent updates. We will continue the knowledge session along with his news and updates on latest immigration followed by a Q&A. Before we get to the topic, you can call us on the numbers on the screen for questions related to immigration and also ask tips. Hello, Mr. Chan. Before we get on to the topic, do we have any latest immigration updates this week?
Thank you, Shivani. Hello, everyone. Yeah, there are a couple of important updates. So starting with the immigration updates from the employment-based immigration world in the last few weeks. The big update is we just had a third lottery for the H1B. It was kind of unexpected. This was last year, we did not have the third lottery. This year, 2 weeks ago, USCIS came back and notified us that the people from the second lottery, they did not file, so they had more slots open. And it was a good news to a lot of people who did not get selected in the first 2 rounds. So now we have a new lottery. And we have another 90 days. So people who have been selected in the third lottery will have until the third week of February to file their H1Bs. And the note that came out was that around 16,000 new registrations were selected in the third lottery. So that's a good number. And that's hopefully going to help a lot of employees who did not get selected in the first 2 rounds of the H1B lottery. And apart from that, on the green card side, the December bulletin that just came out last month, it was not very promising. The dates did not go very further ahead, but it was kind of expected based on the predictions by Department of State in the prior month. The good news is that from the meeting with Charlie Oppenheim, the in charge at Department of State for the visa bulletins, the big update is that USCIS has been working very quickly. They have been trying to process a significant number of 485s, and the consulates, the Department of State, they have been processing a significant number of immigrant visas. And what that means is that this year probably we will not have a lot of wastage. So in a way, it is good that we will not have a lot of wastage. And on the flip side, it would mean that probably there will not be any spillover from the family-based side to the employment-based side. But overall, it is very good that the numbers might be utilized this year. And we just want to make sure, we just hope that there is not a lot of wastage like what has happened last year. That being said, the final news is about the COVID variant. We have a new variant. And at this point of time, we are not seeing any impact on the travel between India and US as far as immigration is concerned. However, things are changing quickly, and the Biden's administration is, they are more than likely saying there will not be any travel ban like we had in the past. They're not in favor of travel bans. So more than likely, I think the focus is on vaccination. So people who need to have a third booster shot, probably should get it done because we never know. The administration might require a booster shot for traveling into US at some point down the line. But at this point of time, there is no impact on the travel between India and US as far as the new COVID variant is concerned, but something to watch out the next couple of weeks.
Yes, Mr. Chan. Now, Mr. Chan, does the US government allow automatic authorization of jobs of spouses of H1B visa holders?
Right. So a couple of rule changes happened last month from a lawsuit, and there is no per se automatic job authorization for H1B spouses. There is no automatic employment authorization. However, one still needs to file what is called the I-765 form for employment authorization, and one has to go through the process. However, the only change is that now people do not have to wait until the EAD card is approved under certain circumstances. Typically, in the past, one had to file the 765, one had to get an approval before they could start working. The new rule for some set of people under limited circumstances gives an automatic extension. So it is not an automatic authorization, but an automatic extension for some H4 spouses, not for all. So we really hope that they get an automatic job authorization based on status. But as of today, there is no automatic authorization incident to their H4 status.
Yes. We have a caller from Maryland. His name is Mr. Venkat. Hello, Mr. Venkat. You can ask your question to Mr. Chan.
Yeah, hi. Thank you
Venkat.
so much for answering. Hi, Chan. This is Venkat, and
Hi.
can I explain my scenario for just a minute?
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, I came to US in 2012, and in recently last year, because of my previous employer, I got some annoyed, and I just my employer got revoked my H1, so I had to move to the F1 status. I applied for a change of status H1 to F1, and for fiscal year 2022, I got to pick in the lottery for 2022, and so I again applied on from F1 to H1. That means like a bridge petition from H1 to F1, F1
Right.
to H1. So if I get the approval, I'm initiating the premium. If I get the approval, I may get 797B. So can I report to my client who is supporting for my H1? Can I report and go for stamping, or I have to wait until I get the stamping?
So there are two things that will happen once you upgrade. You will get an approval either with an I-94 or you will get an approval without I-94. If you get an approval with I-94, what that means is your change of status from F1 to H1, the change of status request has been approved. So once you see your approval, if you see something like the change of status from F1 to H1 is approved, and you see an I-94 at the bottom of your approval, you can stay back in the country and let your client know that you're able to work on H1. That being said, for some reason, say you get an approval, the H1 is approved, but the change of status from F1 to H1 is not approved. In that case, you would have to go out of the country, get stamping, and then come back into the country on H1B status.
Well, thank you, Mr. Venkat, for calling us. Now, Mr. Chan, the next question is the US government allowing the work authorization for L1 visa holders and their spouses?
Yes. So the rule changes for the spouse holders of L1 visa holders are a little bit different. And USCIS has agreed that the spouses of L1 visa holders, they have work authorization incident to status. So what that means is in the future, they should be able to work while on L2 status. And that is without filing any I-765, without filing any employment authorization filings. However, they said they need 120 days to implement it because right now on the L2 status, you have L2 spouses and you also have L2 the child dependents. So in the next couple of weeks, probably in the next 1-2 months, we will see some changes from USCIS, and they will be changing their I-94 process, and they will annotate the I-94s for L2 spouses as the spouse of an L1 visa holder. Once technically that happens, they do not need to file any employment authorization filings, and they are allowed to work based on the I-94.
Yes, Mr. Chand. Now, Mr. Chand, are the immigration services allowing automatic extension up to 180 days? Is that happening?
So the automatic extension of 180 days, for some categories, it has been there for a while. So last month, because of the court case for the L2 spouses and the H4 spouses, what has happened was they are now allowing automatic extension for L2 spouses as well as H4 EAD applicants under certain circumstances. So what that means is we have already had this 180-day automatic extension for a couple of categories. And examples are, for example, OPT extensions or somebody on a pending I-485. Even previously they had this 180-day extension, and now going forwards, somebody on H4 under again certain circumstances. There are certain circumstances they said that have to be satisfied. And another critical thing is they have to file an EAD extension application before the current EAD card expires. If they do that, under certain circumstances, some set of H4 EAD applicants, they will get automatically 180-day extension. And they do not have to wait until their EAD card is approved. In the past, they had to wait until their EAD card is approved. Now, they will be able to work even while their EAD card, their EAD filing, it's in process.
Yes, the viewers can call on us to the number shown on the screen. Now, Mr. Chand, what does this policy change mean to the Indians? What are the pros and cons?
Right. So Indians, I mean, clearly people working on H1B and even on L1, they have been contributing enormously to US economy. It is very clear. I mean, if you see the news, if you see how the companies are being run, the top management, the H1B program is a great success. It is really contributing to the American economy. And that being said, so the L1 spouses and the H4 spouses, they're allowed to work. But what is happening is in the last 1-2 years, the employment authorization, they have to file for employment authorization, and they have to wait until that gets approved. And what that means is people have been losing out on the opportunity to work because the EAD filings are taking close to 1 year. And until they get the EAD approval, people could not work. And this has been a problem, which is why a couple of Indian applicants, they went to the court. They went to the court and sued USCIS, and they said that is not fair. And luckily, the courts agreed, and USCIS reached a settlement with these applicants. And in response to that, they came out with a guidance last month. And now, because of this policy changes, the L1 spouses, they're able to work incident to their status. So they don't, in the future, they don't even have to do any filing. Based on their status as a spouse of an L1 visa holder, they will be able to work. So that is really very important because now they don't have to worry about expiration of their employment authorization. They don't have to worry about extending their employment authorization. It is based on their status. And even for the H4, it does not help in a way we wanted it to help because they put some caveats. They said that the H4 EAD extension applies only if the H4 status has not expired. In reality, what happens is the H4 and H4 EAD expire at the same time for most of the people. So the policy changes are not really practically good enough for the H4 spouses. But again, the current guidance, it's a good sign. And it's going to help the L1 spouses. And I think for the H4 spouses, what it will do is it will reduce the time for employment authorization because now they're streamlining their process. So overall, I think it is going to help the spouses of L1 visa holders and H1B visa holders to continue to work in US, contribute to the economy, and help their families by having a job.
Yes, Mr. Chand. We have another caller from Maryland. Her name is Ramya. Hello, Ms. Ramya. You can ask your question now.
Hi, sir. Good evening. Actually, I have a question related to H4 EAD only. So we're discussing the same topic, right? So I was eligible for 180-day auto extension policy, but I already lost my 90 days. Only 90 days left. so that I can, use that 180-day policy. But I'm still worried, my EAD will not be approved in another 90 days also, looking at the situations and everything. So what happened is I lost my job and my old manager was good enough to take me back in the same role. But if I don't get the EAD by another 90 days, I'm going to lose my job again. And, it will not be good with the company or with the management, anybody, right? So I was thinking of applying for a litigation lawsuit. So is that a good suggestion or no?
So since in your case, you said you have about 90 days, I think this is what I think you should do. You should try to get a letter from your company talking about you losing your job and try to expedite your case. So try to initiate an expedite request with USCIS, see if it works. If it doesn't work, I think the next alternative is a lawsuit. So a lawsuit is definitely a good alternative. And we have seen it work for a number of people last year. And that being said, in the last 1 month or so, we did see EAD cards approvals getting a lot more faster than what it used to be last year. And I think the main reason is you don't have fingerprinting anymore for getting H4 EAD. So I think that contributed to this process getting a little bit more faster. And at least definitely in our law firm, we have seen things getting a little faster in the last 1 month or so. So I'm hoping since you have 90 days, more than likely you'll probably get it. But if not, if you want to be proactive, a lawsuit is definitely a good way to be proactive. And the other easier option is try to expedite. Call USCIS and let them know that you're going to lose your job because you only have 90 days. And show your reasons and try to expedite and see if that works. Expedite, on the other hand, it works for some people, it doesn't work for some people. It's clearly a hit or miss kind of a thing. But there is no harm trying because you clearly have a genuine reason. You're going to have severe financial loss if you lose your job. So show that reason and request USCIS to expedite your case. And sometimes that could work too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I already raised expedite request a couple of times, sir. But unfortunately, it doesn't work for me. And I raised PR after losing my job. I was like...
Yes. Thank you, Ramya, for calling us. Mr. Chan, we have another caller from Arizona. His name is Mr. Suresh. Hello, Mr. Suresh. You can ask your question now.
Hi, Suresh. How are you? This is regarding H4 child aged out. My kid is 20 years old now. Will he eligible for H4 visa after 21? And in case if he is not eligible 21, so how soon we have to do a F1 filing?
So unfortunately,
now,
the current rules,
he is 20 years old and H4 approval still approved until he is 23. Is he can he stay after 21 on H4?
So based on the current regulations, the H4 should be valid only till he is 21. So if he currently got an approval until he is 23, probably it's an error. But from your perspective, until 21, he can stay on H4. After 21, he ages out. And currently there are some, there is a law that got passed in Congress that talks about age out. It's a bill. It's not become a law yet. So in the future, we don't know if any new laws will be passed to tackle this age out problem. But as of today, the age out happens at 21. And what typically the child has to do is they have to get onto their own status. So either they get onto F1 or some other valid status. And if he's 20, he probably has about 1 year. And F1, the change of status from H4 to F1 takes some time. It takes anywhere between 6 to 8 months. So I think now is the time you should start trying to change the status from H4 to F1. That being said, if you want a faster option to change him to F1, you can always go out of the country for stamping and come back on F1. That is probably something not what I recommend, but that's an option. And at least 8 to 12 months before they age out is when you should start planning to change it, to convert them to another status.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for calling us. Now, Mr. Chand, does the US court allow any permits or grants for L2 and H4 immigrant visa spouses?
When you say grants, the code. So
Yes.
basically, the whole reason why we have this better policies for L2 and H4 EADs is because uh, a group of Indians, they filed a class action lawsuit earlier this year in the federal court, arguing the unfair policies which are contributing to people not being able to work. So the court helped. Basically, USCIS has reached a settlement based on this court case, and now uh, we have better policies where L2 people don't have to even worry about applying for the EAD authorization and streamlining the process for H4 applicants. So this whole lawsuit is what kind of contributed to this USCIS changing its policy and coming up with its new policy guidance in the second week of November last month.
Yes. We have another caller from Arizona. His name is Mr. Suresh. Mr. Suresh, ask your question.
Yeah, sorry, the call got disconnected in between for my the previous call.
Yes.
Chand, yeah, in case if we file F1, the conversion from H4 to F1, if it is not getting approved before his 21st birthday, so what is the action? Can he stay on the notice after 21st birthday, or does he has to leave the country and get it stamped and come back?
So in the previous Trump administration, the policy was a little bit different. So the previous administration wanted you to file another B1, B2 to bridge the gap. So the day he finishes his H4, and until the time your F1 is approved, there was a requirement to file another bridge B1, B2. The current administration changed that policy a few months back. Now what that means is if you have a non-frivolous change of status filing, so a filing from H4 to F1 pending, you don't have to file another bridge petition. You can stay in the country until that application is adjudicated. So technically, the B1, B2 filing is not required anymore.
So that means he can continue his studies even though the file is on pending for approval.
He can stay in the country. He can stay in the country, not study, because technically you are still waiting for an approval to F1. So he can stay in the country. But if you want him to go back to school, I think what he should do is he should go out of the country, get stamping, and come back. So staying in the country should not be a problem once he hits 21. Because once he crosses 21, he's not on H4. He is waiting on
to study, he should
F1.
have an approved visa.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for calling us. Now, Mr. Chan, getting back to the previous question, now, do you mean that the L2 visa holders don't need to have any special employment?
L2 visa holders, they do not need to apply for any employment authorization. So technically, what that means is, again, the rule has changed, but they have not implemented this change because the guidance says that they need to have a new I-94, and the I-94 should show the annotation that they're an L2 spouse, not an L2 child. So everybody on L2 who have an I-94 that says L2 is not eligible to work. But if the I-94 says L2 spouse, then they're eligible to work. And what USCIS has said is that in the next 120 days from the settlement time last month, they said they will make some rule changes. So when somebody goes out of the country and come back into the country, they get a new I-94. So the new I-94 will show as L2 spouse. So once that change is done, they will be able to just work incident to their status. So they don't have to do any special filing. They can just show that I-94 annotation, showing the annotation as an L2 spouse, and they should be able to work. And before they can do that, USCIS said that they will also be changing the I-9 form. So the I-9 form also is going to be changed in the next 120 days. So once the change happens, the L2 spouses, they should be able to work without any filings, any I-765 employment authorization filings.
Yes, Mr. Chan. Can you tell us what is conditional permanent residence?
Sure. So permanent residence is basically the green card. So when we talk about green card, it is called as a permanent residency card. And conditional permanent residence is a specific type of green card where some conditions are put on the green card. So technically somebody is given an approval for a green card, but they have some conditions. And a typical example is like a marriage-based green card. when somebody gets married to a US citizen and that marriage is less than 2 years old, what happens is USCIS gives a green card, but they put some conditions. They say that they have to reapply to get the conditions removed. So within 2 years, when the marriage, when they cross the 2 year period, they have to reapply. They have to file what is called as a Form I-751. And they have to ask USCIS to remove those conditions. So technically, a conditional green card means, a conditional permanent residence means, it is a conditional green card. It is not a permanent green card. They do have the burden of refiling with USCIS and showing the proof of what is required to get the conditions removed. So it is basically a temporary green card.
Yes, Mr. Chan. Now, will the Joe Biden administration extend the temporary protection for the immigrants?
So temporary protected status, typically it's for citizens of some countries. So what happens is, based on the conditions in the world, this list keeps getting updated. So recently, this whole temporary protected status, it's a federal program in US. And what it means is that the immigrants of that particular countries, they can stay back and live and work in the United States as long as that TPS, the temporary protected status, is afforded. And recently, President Joe Biden, he has added Myanmar and Venezuela. So these two countries to this list. And what that means is, because conditions are bad in Myanmar, conditions are bad in Venezuela, as long as these two countries are in the TPS list, anybody from those two countries who are in US can stay back in the country without any problem. They can work in the country. So that is what TPS means. It's a kind of a federal program that helps people from countries where conditions are bad to temporarily stay back and work in the United States. And this is not valid for India because India is not in that list. And this list keeps on getting updated depending on the situation in the country.
Okay, Mr. Chan. Now, Mr. Chan, can you tell us what is the processing time of EB2 green card?
So the EB2 processing time typically depends on the country. The reason is once an I-485 is filed, it should take about 6 to 12 months to get a green card in general. But typically what happens is while the case is in process, sometimes the dates go back, the priority date goes back. So depending on the country, it could take anywhere from 6 months to a couple of years. And that is dependent on the country. If assuming the priority dates are current, it's taking anywhere between 6 months to about a year to get a green card once the EB2, once the I-485 is filed for EB2 category, if the dates are current. And typically, except for China and India, most of the other countries, the dates are typically current.
Yes, Mr. Chan. Mr. Chan, can you tell us any tips and tricks for this latest immigration updates? Any tips that you want to tell to the immigrants?
Sure. So the main tip is we have to stress on the importance of following the laws of the country. We are living in the United States. We have to make sure that we are complying with all the laws. And when we say the laws, it means the federal laws, the central government rules, the federal rules, the local city rules, the state government rules, and rules of pretty much everything that we deal with. And Indians in general are very hardworking people. They typically rarely get into issues with the law. And I just want to reiterate the importance of being compliant with the laws of the society, the laws of the local area. And complying with the laws helps in keeping the system to run efficiently. And that helps everybody. That helps all the immigrants. It helps to keep the process smooth. And it makes sure that immigrants are welcome in this country. And definitely, we know US as a country welcomes immigrants, and hopefully Indians keep working hard and contribute to the economy of this country.
Yes, Mr. Chan. Now, lastly, can you tell us what is the processing time of EB1 visa green card?
So EB1 typically takes anywhere between 8 to 12 months. So again, typically with EB1, the dates are current for pretty much all the countries, including India. So typically with EB1, people file 485 and I-140 together. And if everything goes good, it's about 8 to 12 month process. Unfortunately, if somebody gets a request for evidence, an RFE, the process can get delayed. But assuming the case is very strong, one should see a green card in about 8 to 12 months if they're in the country. But if they're outside the country and going for consular processing, it could probably add another 6 months or so.
Yes, Mr. Chan. So, Mr. Chan, is EB1 current for India?
EB1 is luckily current for India right now. EB2 and EB3 are pretty bad right now.
Yes. Now, Mr. Chan, lastly, can you please tell us how long, especially due to the COVID, a lot of immigrants are stuck in the US. So, how long can they stay, or it depends on individual to individual?
So everybody in US, they have to look at their I-94, anybody on a non-immigrant visa. So as long as their the date on the I-94 is still valid, they can stay in the country. And for some reason, like for example, the COVID pandemic, they need to extend their stay. The way to extend their stay is to file an extension application with USCIS and requesting for permission to stay back in the country. As long as the extension application is sent to USCIS before their I-94 expires, typically they should be able to get an extension.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for coming on to our show. We had an amazing show today. We covered so many different topics. Thank you to the viewers for tuning in. You're watching Sakshi TV with me, Shivani Raj.